Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports, the pollster who isn't just about election horse races. Now, it seems like the news doesn't really care anymore about public opinion. Their pollsters only seem to get trotted out when it's time to fortify an election. We think public opinion is important because as journalists, we can hold the government and the media accountable based on what Americans think. Like when, in a ubiquitous manner, all of the government and media tells you that concerns about election integrity are conspiracy theories or, the big lie or something like that, when in reality, 66% of all U.S. likely voters that the outcome
it's at least
of this
somewhat likely
election,
that the
2024,
outcome
of this upcoming election will be affected by cheating. And I bet you didn't hear that story in the mainstream news media. Heck, you didn't even see it in your favorite conservative media outlet, because only a few people in this country will touch that third rail topic. Well, we've been covering that, as well as the concerns about the weaponization of our government, the failures of Congress, both parties, the co-opting of our intelligence agencies, and now we have numbers today that show that Americans think the government is just flat out lying to them to carry water for the Biden regime. A bunch of liars. And also, hang on to the end for a quick update about the state of the 2024 race. But if you've been paying attention to the economic news, you're likely familiar with this story. U.S. economy created 818,000 fewer jobs than previously reported. Anybody who follows Zero Hedge knows the theme that time and time again, government release numbers are continuously revised after they're reported, after they move the stock market, but generally revised in only one direction, down. It turns out that's exactly what was happening with the jobs numbers. U.S. job growth during much of the past year was significantly weaker than previously reported, according to new data published Wednesday. The Bureau of Labor Statistics revised down its total tally of jobs created in the year through March by 818,000 as part of its preliminary annual benchmark review of payroll data. So it's just a preliminary review. That suggested the economy added an average of 174,000 jobs per month during that time period, below the previous 242,000 estimate. Now, if you want to pull up a calculator, what that means is just over the last year, the economy added about 30% less jobs than Joe Biden's own government reported. And we know how tied in the DC bureaucracy is with the Democrat regime. It really has some pretty horrible optics here. Now, since April, we've been coming out with our own unemployment rate. And it turns out that it's about twice the official reported rate. In fact, some of the months it did hit 2x. Right here, it's a little bit less than 2x, but these are the numbers as of the end of July. And it's a massive sample, 9,000 American adults, and 8.4% of them, when weighted to reflect the census demographics, say that they're unemployed but looking for work. Pretty stunning, 14% of Americans under 40. Just so you know, over the same time period, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an arm of the government, reported that the unemployment rate was 4.3%. And looking back over Biden's term, one of the major things they used to justify Bidenomics was the incredibly low unemployment rate. Turns out it was artificially suppressed. And if you believe our numbers, which I humbly suggest you do, it looks like there may be more disclosures about government lies here, because we all know the way they come up with the unemployment rate is horrendously opaque. Well, we decided to poll on the impact of all of this lying. Here's 1,100 U.S. likely voters conducted August 25th through 27th. The Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics has admitted that it previously overestimated the number of new jobs created in the past year. which is more likely, that this was an honest mistake or that it was politically motivated. And 34% of US likely voters, only 1 in 3 say the government made an honest mistake, but a majority, 53% of them, said it was politically motivated. And that's even with 13% of voters saying they're not sure. Men were actually, in this situation, more likely to say it was an honest mistake. And it was definitely older voters. That's crazy. The 18 to 39-year-olds are increasingly cynical about the government. Likely one of the main reasons that they've been swinging more and more towards Trump. 58% of it was politically motivated, but less than a majority of 65 and older voters. I think these people are more tied into the regime, likely watching a lot more MSNBC, CNN, and yes, even Fox News, which increasingly seems to be carrying the regime's water. If they'd like me to come on and address that, I would love to be on one of their shows because I have a lot of stuff to tell Fox News followers. The race numbers are, not enough signal to talk about, but let's look at the party numbers. 55% of Democrats say it was an honest mistake, and that number's really low, though, considering that ostensibly these benefited Biden. 31% of them say it was politically motivated. 72% of Republicans, only 17% say honest mistake. But look at independents. These independents are largely independent for a reason. They do not like the two-party system, and they're increasingly just as cynical about the government as Republicans. A strong majority, 58% of them, say it's politically motivated. Only 29% say it was an honest mistake. And let's just stop out here in education to see a really stunning signal. The only people that believe the government here, by a plurality, not even a majority, are those who have at least a graduate degree. They say honest mistake, 45% to 43%. Everybody else, by a massive majority, says it's politically motivated. How is that for street smarts? Even government employees, by a plurality, say it was politically motivated. Stunning. But here are the Biden approval numbers, and it shows that people who strongly approve of Biden are way more trusting of the government. 75%, the biggest number in all the crosstabs, say honest mistake. Only 15% will even consider the idea that a government agency might be politically motivated. But wow, totally different among Biden disapprovers. Among Biden's strong disapprovers, only 6% say it was an honest mistake. That's a ridiculously low number. 86% say politically motivated. But on to the next question. How likely is it that the revised job estimate signals that the U.S. economy is heading into a recession? And this would be really bad for Harris because she's part of the Bidenomics administration. 31% say very likely, kind of low. Another 28% say at least somewhat likely, though. For a total of 59%, only 31% say not, at least not likely. So that's almost a 2-to-1 margin. And Republicans are a lot more pessimistic here. 77% think a recession is coming, covered up by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Only 16% say not likely, but 42% of Democrats say likely, and 50% majority say not likely. Independents are more on the Republican side here, 58% to 29%, almost, again, a 2-to-1 margin. But thinking about the presidential election, which candidate do you trust more to handle the economy, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? And Donald Trump wins here by 8 points among U.S. likely voters, again, in a time period where he was roughly up about 2 to 3 points nationally. And that's, because some of the people that think that Trump would do better than Harris are not voting or voting third party or have other single issues. But the same trend that we've been seeing over and over again, Donald Trump absolutely trounces Kamala Harris on almost every important issue except for like abortion and climate change. Even a strong crossover signal among the party numbers, way more Republicans go for Trump than Democrats go for Harris. And Trump wins independents by almost 20 points. Pretty stunning. Now, I said we'd check in on the race, and here is our chart of individual nightly responses. And before anybody freaks out here, there's been a lot of vitriol and desperation on our Twitter feed. And by the way, you can follow us and see these at Rasmussen_poll that we put out every day, or Mark_R_Mitchell. Same stuff, maybe a little bit more commentary. And for the last 2 nights now, Donald Trump has been underwater by 1 point for the first time since the end of July, when Kamala Harris was first anointed. But here are some caveats. One, these individual night responses have a margin of error of plus or minus 5%. You have to visualize in your head the normal distribution layered on top of this cloud of results here. This is essentially a neck and neck race within a statistical tie right now, according to almost all of these numbers, except for the 3 nights that Trump was winning by over 10 points. The reason I'm putting this out here is to show to everybody the trends, and everybody through all of the beginning of August said Kamala Harris was having a huge bounce, and she absolutely wasn't. And now that everybody comes out and says she didn't have a post-DNC bounce, they probably already baked it into their results. Ours is kind of showing a tick up right now for her, although it could be noise. I think what is likely happening doesn't have anything to do with what's in the news cycle right now. It has everything to do with the fact that people are on the beach. So again, follow us on Twitter, because after tonight's polling, we'll be putting out a new data point, and the next 2 data points will dictate where the Thursday final Trump versus Harris matchup numbers come out at. Last time Trump was up almost 2 points nationally, quite a different picture than the rest of the polling industry. But here we go with Real Clear Politics, and we will check in on the rest of the polling industry. They pretty much lurched all the way left to Harris plus 1.5, drifted up a little bit to 1.8, and they're kind of stuck there. And mostly it's because people aren't really putting out a ton of new polls. This is like really not a lot, especially if you compare to how many polls came out back in June and July. And because of that, you have polls like this ABC News Ipsos driving the average. And I'll tell you right now, ABC News is the organization that owns 538 that kicked us out of their aggregate for political reasons. Everybody following this channel knows that story. But I just took a look at this one poll here because it's so different than mine. 6 points left, which, by the way, matches about how left the polling industry was of us back in 2020 and 2016. They all said they learned their lessons, but they don't seem to have changed everything, because one look at the crosstabs here immediately shows you the problem. Their favorability numbers give Harris like a 28-point net favorability advantage over Trump. She's above water in favorability in this poll, but Trump only had a 33% favorability and a 57% unfavorable rate. That's absolutely incredible. To get to numbers that low, that basically means that they had to poll like almost exclusively never Trump Republicans and independents. I really don't know how they got results like that, because it looks nothing like ours. If everybody's been watching, Kamala Harris's favorability rates were always slightly worse than Biden's, and Biden's were worse than Trump. And she has surged a little bit recently. She's up at 48%. I think Trump's at 48 to 50%, depending on the poll. So they are almost at parity in my poll. Again, this poll has almost 30 points of thumb on the scale, so to speak. But polling industry aside, we can check in on some other things. I will say Nate Silver, despite the fact that all the polling here shows Harris winning except for us and Fox News. Actually, there's a few people getting close to us. Wall Street Journal, Quinnipiac. I know for a fact that Trafalgar and Inside Advantage had Trump up at least a point as well. But whatever, in Nate Silver's numbers, he has Trump like a double-digit favorite to win as far as, the statistical likelihood of him winning. And that is pretty incredible. I think Harris only had like a low 70s as far as winning the popular vote. So that's not a good sign, especially considering that Nate Silver's numbers are based on the polling in the industry. So at least he's correctly compensating for the leftward slant here. But if you look at Polymarket, Trump is up here as well. Again, the polling doesn't show this. So these people are either looking ahead or trading on something else. Who knows? And Donald Trump is within 5 points on predicted as well. And this one has been left or leaning for this cycle. And I'm pretty sure I heard a story that Trump is winning in the Vegas bookie odds as well. So across the board, everywhere except for basically 538 in Real Clear Politics. Again, if Harris only gets 1.8 nationally, that's worse than Clinton and Biden did. I mean, it has the numbers right here. So Trump is probably going to win even at this juncture. But a lot can happen between now and Election Day. Again, these most recent numbers were Labor Day polling. Everybody's at the beach. Everybody's worried about going back to school. Everybody's jobs are starting to get harder, and people will really tune in on the election now. And people talking about Gold Star families right now, yeah, I think that's really bad optics for Kamala Harris. I don't think a lot of people really know about that story. But now is when the calculus changes, because stories like that will start to get traction in the media. So the news cycle is likely going to be empty between now and the debate, and we'll see if things like that start to percolate up. And if you want to see how it affects the daily numbers, come look at Twitter at Rasmussen_poll. Hit me up as well. And thanks for watching.